Now we're going to focus on some carbohydrates. We're going to zoom through these pages and start on the top of page 10, which looks a little odd on my screen, but hopefully it should look normal in your notes. We're going to be looking at specific information about carbohydrates. Now, we've already talked about that carbohydrates can be identified because you should see C, H, and O in a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. Now, whenever you think of carbohydrates, carbohydrates can fall into three different categories. They can be called monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. And I want you to think small, medium, and large. So, whenever we have a monosaccharide, we have one small molecule that it's made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in that 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. Mono means one. So it's just one single small sugar. To make a disaccharide, we can take monosaccharides and we can link them together. So let's show here's a monosaccharide, here's a monosaccharide, and they can be joined together. Mine doesn't show it very well. Let's try that. Okay. And then you have a disaccharide. So a disaccharide is a sugar that is made by putting two monosaccharides together. And to get a polysaccharide, we're going to take several monosaccharides and we're going to link them together. So I'm just trying to show you dot after dot after dot, linking them together. It's a little bit hard to do though on my touch screen. Okay, so when you think of carbs, there's three types of carbs: small, medium, and big ones. Those are the monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Now, since we take monosaccharides and we use them, we're going to chain them together to build bigger carbohydrates. Monosaccharides are known as the monomers of carbs. So if you need to build big carbohydrates, you need to chain together several monomers or monosaccharides. Now, to make a disaccharide, di means two, we need two monosaccharides, and we're going to link them together. We're going to talk more about these specific monosaccharides. You can see we have glucose, fructose, and galactose. And you see here, down here, I have a different molecule. It's called sucrose. It's a disaccharide. And if you want to make sucrose, you got to hook together a glucose, you can see it here, and a fructose. And that makes this disaccharide sucrose. If you want to make lactose, which is another disaccharide, because you see it's made of kind of two parts here, two different molecules, you're going to need another glucose and this other monosaccharide, galactose. Put them together and you have a disaccharide. When you look here at our polysaccharides, you can see every single one of them. It's a chain of many small molecules together. Let's go ahead and indicate that there's usually more. I'm just going to put plus dot 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 because usually these are very long molecules that are made of thousands of monosaccharides. So these molecules keep going. But notice all three of these are all made of glucose. So maybe now you kind of have an idea of why glucose is so important is because glucose is used to make several other molecules. So you need it to build cellulose, you need glucose to build starch, you need lots of glucoses to build glycogen. So they're all made of glucoses. So whenever you link more than three, so let's put more than three monosaccharides together, then we're going to call that molecule a polysaccharide. Now we're going to get into just more specifics. I've mentioned these molecules, and we're going to just kind of fill in the notes as to what I expect you guys to remember about them. So there's three monosaccharides I expect you to know: glucose, fructose, and galactose. There's more than three monosaccharides, but we're just going to stick with these three. Now, again, we can take them and we can put them together with other monosaccharides and build bigger carbohydrates. So that's why these are referred to as the monomers. Mono means one. They're single molecules, but we can string them together. Now, if you taste glucose, fructose, or galactose, then you're going to note that they will taste sweet. And since they taste sweet, we have a name for them. So we can say that they are simple sugars. Anytime you eat something that has simple sugars in it, it's going to taste sweet. And so they're just simple molecules. They're small molecules. When they hit your taste buds, you're going to register that they taste sweet. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit more about each one of those. So, glucose, we said, is a monosaccharide, and it is produced by plants. Hopefully, you recognize this equation right here, and that is photosynthesis. So, photosynthesis is a process that plants can do, and that is where we get glucose. Now, plants and animals need this glucose because we have to take glucose and take the energy out of it and put it in a usable form. And what is usable for our cells is ATP. So plant and animal cells can break down glucose, release that energy, and use it to make ATP molecules, which is what our cells need as an energy source. Okay, we've already mentioned that glucose is an important monosaccharide that can help us build many disaccharides and polysaccharides. So, for example, you can take glucose plus fructose, and that gives us a disaccharide. So, glucose plus fructose equals a sucrose. All right, whenever you think of fructose, I want you to think of fruit. They kind of sound alike. So most of the fruits that you eat will taste sweet, and that's because the fruit has fructose inside of it. And so it is a common sugar that is used by plants to sweeten their fruit. Now, we can produce fructose when we grow corn. You probably have heard of high fructose corn syrup, and we use fructose that we can get from corn to sweeten many of our foods that we produce in the United States. So it is a common sweetener. And why we use fructose is because we can mass produce it here in the Midwest because we can grow a lot of corn here. So it's easy to produce it and make it, and it's cheap, so we can use it to sweeten our foods. We've mentioned that fructose, along with glucose, those are monosaccharides, and we can put them together to form a disaccharide. So glucose plus fructose equals sucrose, which is a disaccharide. All right, the last one I'm just going to point out is that in its name, galactose, it has this word lactose. And galactose is needed to make milk sugar. Lactose is that milk sugar that you're tasting, and it's a disaccharide. And to make it, you need a glucose and you need this other monosaccharide, which is called galactose. And that's how we get sugar in milk. Okay. All right. Speaking of sugar in milk, now we're going to move into our disaccharides here. Remember, di means two. So when we link two monosaccharides together, we'll have a disaccharide. And we already talked about how monosaccharides or monomers can be linked together is by a process called dehydration synthesis. So we will remove water. So out comes the water. And now we have them together. And now we call this a disaccharide. Now, if you put a disaccharide on your tongue, it is also going to taste sweet. So again, we can call disaccharides, just like monosaccharides, simple sugars. Anything that tastes sweet is characterized or classified as a simple sugar. There's two disaccharides I expect you to remember. One is sucrose. And you are very familiar with sucrose, you just don't know it. It is common table sugar. So when you sweeten your Kool-Aid or you sweeten your tea, you are going to use sucrose. When you bake cookies, you're probably using sucrose. That comes from sugar cane. Now, again, I've already mentioned that sucrose, it's a disaccharide. And hopefully you can remember from what I said in the past that to make sucrose right here, we need two monosaccharides. So glucose is a mono. Fructose is a monosaccharide too. When you put them together, what this diagram is showing you, now we have a disaccharide. If that disaccharide has a glucose and a fructose, then we have sucrose. Over here, the other disaccharide, I expect you to know, lactose. Again, that is the sugar that is in milk. And I know that you probably think milk is not that sweet, but I wanted to show you a label from the milk. And you can see it has sugars in it. And those sugars right there are lactose. So it will taste a little bit sweet. Okay. All right. And again, lactose is a disaccharide. So what that means is we took one monosaccharide, glucose, we attached galactose to it, and now we have a brand new molecule, a disaccharide, which is called lactose. In the lab that we are going to do today, we're going to be talking about why some people are lactose intolerant. And what that means is if they're lactose intolerant, remember, there's two parts to lactose. So when you go to digest milk sugar, you are supposed to make a protein that can cut lactose back into its two pieces, glucose and galactose. And if you can't do that and they stay together as lactose, then that can wreak havoc with your digestive system and you are lactose intolerant.